Scottish beef has got a good name for itself. We are producing a product that's wanted in the marketplace, but we need to have all the signs that encourage us to keep doing it, and we do it well, and we have the land and we have the people to do it right. I think we've also got to make sure that we balance our production and keep our numbers right, because there's always a drive, Alec, on the other side to make sure that we're hitting our net zeros, our climate. And the cattle are not the reason for the issue. They're part of the solution to help everybody maintain what they want to do. But we must keep looking at opportunities and do that as well and adjust to what people are wanting.
The beef industry in Scotland is nothing if not resilient and adaptable. Whether it's changing markets and cost of production pressures, policy developments, or the new entrant bottleneck. To help us navigate these topics and many more, today I'm joined by Senior Beef Specialist Gavin Hill in the run-up to the Royal Highland Show to discuss the outlook for the sector. Hi Gavin, how are you getting on?
Oh, not too bad, Alec, not too bad at all. Just getting ready, maybe go to the Highland Show in the next couple of days, and that should be about it.
Yeah, it's a busy time of year, but it's going to be good. Looking forward to the Highland Show. Will you be over for many days?
I usually do the Thursday and Friday. I've got a few things on, getting out and about and seeing what's the lie of the land and what's everybody saying to it. So actually, it'll be interesting what they're saying about the beef industry tomorrow.
So Gavin, thanks for coming on the podcast today. And I just wanted to get a sense of where we are with the beef sector in Scotland. It's been a wee while since we've had a beef episode, and you're certainly the man up to the task. For those listeners who maybe haven't come across you before, can we just get a bit of an introduction as to who is Gavin Hill and what's your role within SAC Consulting?
Thanks for that. Yeah, Gavin Hill, Senior Beef Specialist, SAC Consulting. I've probably been doing this role now, Alec, for about 26 years. I don't look like it, but I have been doing it. And it's actually, I've originally worked under Basil Lohman for a long time, so I learned a lot of things there, a lot of positives, a lot of other ones as well. And so I've been doing that and traveling right around Scotland. So every day, my beef work, it's from genetics to health, nutrition, management, markets, profitability, economics. Really, we always call it from conception to plate. That's what I kind of call it. So you're really having to make sure that you're up to date as much as possible. You could be going in to discuss things with farmers one day, estates the next day, retailers, processors, industry organisations, Scottish Government. So it's a bit of a mixture of everything, but it is an exciting job and a job that I've always loved to do for the last 20 odd years.
And so apart from the Highland Show, I mean, what's topical right now? What are people talking about within the sector?
Well, I think actually if anybody's talking about anything at the moment, is everybody trying to grab their silage. It's been the last few weeks around about us, Alex. You know, it's been on and off all the time with the weather, and I think most folk are up to date with it. And certainly there's been changes. I would have said that the beef industry is maybe in a bit of a state of flux, a period of flux, you'd maybe call it, where there's a lot of uncertainty, change, instability, that going on, because we've seen rapid changes from April and May of 2025, where prices of beef really lifted quite considerably from 2024 prices. And we always called it was a bit of a false economy there. We knew things were going to have to come back down, and they have come back down with a bit of a bang. So if you look at prices from 2024 to 2026, there's been a bit of a lift, but it's because of that 2025 that caused that unnecessary false economy that everybody's taken a bit of a knock on it. But it has been a good time, and let's not defend that. The beef industry is a great industry to be in since, I would have said the last year and a half now, the start of 2025. We have seen store prices really increase quite considerably, 800 to £1,000 at times now. And that has really brought confidence back to many people in the suckler industry, those with suckler cows that were selling store cattle. Because the finishers, when they saw the prices go up in 2025 to that, what I call unrealistic value, they were quite prepared to go back into the marketplace and pay for store cattle. That brought confidence into the store producers. And really, the store producers have kept this confidence right through to now. And the reward has really come for the store producer from the finisher. The finisher's not seeing his return at the moment, which we'll explain later, Alec. but they've 2 good seasons of selling spring cattle for our producers. And they've needed that because for a number of years, as you well know, a lot of them have questioned their profitability, whether it really is a profitable sector to be in. We saw numbers coming down. I think since 2015, we've seen about a drop of about 11.7% in cows. But recently, in the year and a half, we've probably seen these numbers stabilise. So record prices for breeding bulls, record prices for breeding females as well, because the suckler industry has seen this confidence brought back in. It's great to see it, but we know it's volatile as well because the finishers are now going to feel their part because they're seeing their prices going down. And I think that's the bit we've got to look at. And when we talk about the beef industry, there's so many different components to beef industry. You've got those who are producers rearing store cattle. You've got those that take their cattle right through to finish. You've got actual what you call people that are just simply rearing, taking store cattle and finishing them off. You've got those that are doing beef from the dairy as well, and those that sell breeding cattle all the time. And to say that all 5 sectors there are doing well is not. There's about 2 or 3 areas of that 5 who are feeling it, while 2 or 3 others are doing well, and they need each other. And to go and say, well, the finisher just needs to drop his price, that then has a knock-on effect back to the producers, and they start losing confidence back into the sector, Alec. But let's not take away, over the last 18 months, it's brought great positivity back into the sector, the producers, and we can see that. And they really feel that there's profitability, and it really makes them feel that these cows are there, they're justifiable economically as well.
It's interesting, Gavin. I mean, you know me and you know my background. I come from a dairy farm, so dairy cross calves are really my only exposure to the beef market, and we've had unprecedented prices for our beef calves. It's been great. Taking them to Lanark, getting £1,000 a head for 12 to 16 week old cattle. It's great, but that won't be the same story across the board. And I do wonder, how do the people who buy these make money at it?
Well, I think that's always going to be the question. I think, Alec, we always got to take up your hat to the dairy industry recently, because they're able to produce that one cow, and that one cow is able to do 2 functions: produce the milk from the udder and a calf out the back end. The suckler doesn't have the positivity of a milk check in any way. That's been the biggest change, and what we've seen within the dairy industry is beef from the dairy, where they're actually able to put your Angus, your British Blues, or whatever it is, into half their herd, because they're using sex semen in the other half of the herd and producing all these females, so they don't have to use all the herd to get 50% of their females. By using sex semen on their females, they're getting all their females that they need, all the replacements they need. And all of a sudden, calves that were often seen as being worthless from Holsteins and Friesians are now coming out from beef bulls and being worth a lot of money in the marketplace. And got to take our hat off to the dairy industry at times that have very much positivity there. I know there's always going to be questions on the milk thing. Now, to go and say, how does folk get out of it? And I think we're really in a situation at the moment that the calf from beef from the dairy is such a high price at the moment. I think that's been one of the major effects on the store cattle prices in the store rings. But when this in 2025 in springtime, where the price went up to 700 to 710 pence a kilo, the finishers were selling cattle and making really, really good margins because they'd bought their cattle maybe in 2024 at a lot lower level. So they could clearly see huge margins coming into them, very, very good margins. But they kept doing that and kept buying these store cattle, uh, worried about shortage of supply, things like that coming, and thinking the market would hold. But you're now finding with store cattle that some of the prices that they're paying for store cattle isn't that far off of what they're actually getting finishing price. And where they made their margins last year have certainly been equaled out, as you'd say, nullified this year. And so we've got to look at that and say, well, they've taken 1 year of hit. How many more months are they going to actually take here? Okay, what they got last year is probably been able to be a cushion this year. But as I've just talked about earlier on, prices will probably go back down, and you're actually seeing that with some of the heavier store cattle at the moment, Alec. When you can see that they're not paying as much as they were. You've seen prices at 420 pence a kilo plus are now down at 380 uh, because they're not seeing the return at the other end 4 or 5 months later. If you're making if you're buying at 2.2 and selling at 2.3 and £100, and 4 or 5 months later, well, your costs are going to be well above that as well. The only wee blip in the market, well, not blip, positivity is there's still a very, very good market for very young cattle, what you call the grass cattle. These are cattle that are bought and put out to grass. But that's always very popular with a lot of finishers because they like that, because it gives them a continuation of supply for the longer term, that they know these cattle are going to be there. Because we can be quite often worried about the supply, especially when we've given figures over the last number of years of cow numbers coming down.
And Gavin, so there is a little bit of uncertainty in the market right now, but what are some of the factors that are impacting the way prices are moving?
Well, you're always going to get like about 8 to 9 different reasons, and everybody's always got a reason to it. You can actually feel, you can actually hear sometimes some of them say, "Oh, that's the retailers and processors trying to bring back the money they lost last year." That's them just rebalancing the books. You've got that, but we've also got to open our eyes. We're very much dependent on the world market out there, and there's a very volatile oil and gas prices, fertilizer costs, and climate impacts such as the drought, the floods, the heat waves, both in the UK and key import regions. So you've got that knock-on effect, but you've also got the inflation. There's no doubt since 2023, they reckon that some of the shopping baskets can go up about £600-700 per year for a lot of folk. And that's why you've seen major shifts to mince and burgers. And quite often, because of the feeling of inflation and folk really watching their purse, if you know what, Alec, folk will move to the cheaper cuts, the mince and the burgers. And that's why cows have always managed to keep a very good market for themselves, because that's what you're killing them for, is mince and burgers. Where you don't want to kill, Alec, on your farm, one of your prime steers, 50% of it's mince, but you're not able to get rid of the other 50%, which will be the top cuts. So you've got that as well. Catering and hospitality will really be feeling the squeeze of the prices that are going on as well. But I think I was quite disappointed that when you've got organisations, when they've actually advertised themselves as, I'm saying to the consumer, betray your go-to, which basically means come off the beef and go onto the chicken. And you say, oh, it's a different option. No, it's really to protect their margins at the end of the day, because they're feeling the squeeze. There was an interesting fact that one of the McDonald's top drive-through restaurant in England, the top one, actually saw half the cars coming through over the last few months because the fuel price went up. So you have these knock-on effects going on as well. But we've also got the increase. There is always going to be an argument about the level of imports that are coming in, Alex, and stuff like that, because a lot of folks will say we've got no more imports. But I think maybe you can say that, but we can see more imports going about. And I think that actually at the end of the day, they've come from other countries like Brazil, New Zealand, and Australia, and Ireland have actually suffered, and they probably put less into us. I think they're about 17% less into us. So there's all these imports going on. We've got to open up our eyes that we're not just a single country with water around about us. Things are such on a world basis now, things moving about. The other thing that really, I think you and me would totally agree in our area of Scotland at the moment, we've not exactly had barbecue weather. And barbecues, but whether they put steaks on it or burgers, I think it's more burgers and mince and sausages. And you just kind of hope that with Scotland doing so well at the World Cup, we'll keep going through to the final, and the demand will go up every week. But
Here's
I
to hope.
think, as most do, it might be short-lived.
So, just on that, Gavin, I was going to ask. So, we're recording this podcast in June. It'll go out in July. We'll hopefully be in the height of summer. Hopefully, the sunshine will be everywhere, and everybody will have their barbecues out, and we'll all be eating a ton of burgers. Is summer a good time for the beef sector generally? The markets.
the, the markets, the markets can sometimes be subdued a little bit as well because of the increase. Folk will go away on holiday and things like that, and it's usually a wee bit quieter for the processors and retailers as well. But if you get into a good barbecue season, it can certainly take some of your top cuts away and fix it like that. I think we've found over the last number of months our chills and processing plants have really filled up. and it's trying to get them moving all the time. But weather can have a severe impact, and we've seen that. I think they're talking about English chillers have actually emptied far quicker than ours, and I think they've had the weather up to now far better than us. But things are just not moving, and when you look at the price of pork and chicken, and you've got a squeeze in your purse, Alec, you move to cheaper protein products.
And I was going to ask you as well, Gavin. Obviously, the Ukraine conflict is far from resolved. It looks like the Iran conflict is sorting itself out, but we often talk about these conflicts on the international stage impacting things like fertilizer prices. But what is the impact on things like this for the beef sector?
I think they'll not. There's very limited impact on what they're talking about. Costs, prices for cattle. Where we will get the knock-on effect is costs. The same as you for an arable situation or a vegetable situation, dairy, beef, and sheep. It's these costs that continue to go up on us all the time. You know what the knock-on effect was like when the fertilizer became very short 2 or 3 years ago as well. And it's these areas that we talk about as well of oil and gas prices. Think of the increase lately in fuel on each of the farms, and that's our costs as well. We tend to just sometimes look at prices we're receiving, but if you look into it, I think you'll know, Alec, is better than anybody. Some of our costs are going up on our farms continually.
And on that, are there any recent policy announcements or regulatory changes that you think producers should be paying attention to? Any support out there that people can maybe tap into, or anything that you've seen that you think is worth highlighting?
That's an interesting one, Alec, because it's usually you I phone to ask uh, what what we need to be looking at. As far as it goes, as direct support, the only direct support that we've got in at the moment is the Scottish Beef Calf Scheme, and everybody have received that over the last number of months. And actually, if you add it up, you had 100, 200 cows, or whoever it is, that does come to a little bit of money. And we actually do have that positivity of that, that there's few other countries that have that in the UK. Okay, it might be supported in other parts of Europe, but we have that little bit of money coming in, and a pound's a pound, as I say. Who knows what they want to do? You've often heard that they're going to reduce it from 410 days to 400 days. No, that's not come through. We haven't discussed that in any way. But there's always other things that they think that we should maybe be adhering to. What other measures might they look at? Are they going to try and impose other conditionality? Are they going to go and look at the age we calve our cows? Are they going to look at bringing down uh, age of slaughter? I don't. I think this has always been a bit of a thing of bring down the age of slaughter. Actually, since we introduced the 400 kilo deadweight limits, we have brought it down 410, 420, and it has come down over time. And folk are going and saying you're at 28 months. No, we're not. We're probably about 22, 23 months. We're doing a very good job in it. But we've also got to remember we have got so many different types of cattle and how they mature and the age of the maturity, and that you cannot be asking some of our native breeds to be suddenly coming down to 22 and 23 months of age. They're there for certain reasons. But I think in some of our continental types, we can always work at it. But farmers are working it. And I think we're in a far better situation. I think it's all right to go in behind the desk and a bit of paper say we need to do this and do that. But farmers are naturally reacting to it. And you go, well, now we are putting our cattle away at a far better time and at the right period. There used to be a feeling that weight paid, put as much weight on as you can and you'll get a return. Yes, you will get a return, but the costs were always going to outweigh it. And farmers are far better now and are on the ball. And I don't think they need to get this criticism sometimes that are getting thrown at them. Uh, no, they do a good job. But there's always tightening the screws, Alec, and that's our job.
Absolutely. I mean, every system can make an improvement somewhere.
Absolutely.
And Gavin, so you mentioned earlier on in the podcast about the national stock numbers, and that we've maybe kind of stabilized a little bit. What do you think the outlook is for numbers going forward? Are we at the beginning of an increase again? Do you think we're going to stay where we are for a wee while? I mean, what's your take there?
Well, I think first of all, like if you put 10 folk in the room, there'd be about four different views. My view is it's probably stabilised better than it has done for a while. You can see that when herds are getting sold, I think we're still in a situation the herds are reducing, but it's the same as the dairy industry, but the numbers are still there.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of folk looking for replacements. The problem is at the moment, if you're wanting a good cow and calf, you're paying at least £4,000. If you're wanting heifers, you're paying £3,000. And there's not so many of them going about. And that's why the market's probably so good at the moment, because folk are all trying to find these cattle. A lot of them are bought private as well. That's why they don't go through in the market. We go to many farms who are increasing all the time. And if you go down to some of the places in Dumfriesshire and the borders and up north, you can clearly see them increasing the numbers. And it's just, as keep going back to it, yes, you can see farms going off and off, but you're seeing far more sucker herds increasing numbers. It's not unusual now to come across herds at 600, 800, 1,000. And that's what we're seeing. Have we stabilised? Yes, I think far better stabilised than we've been before. We've actually seen areas like even in the northwest, up north of Inverness and Dingwall, where they've been putting cows actually for environmental purposes onto their ground. And they've been doing it so well with what you call the virtual fencing, the collars. It's this virtual fencing. And then they're putting these cows onto areas to vegetate these areas and eat them down. They've never been touched before. And I think that might be one of the things in the future is our sucker cows. Some sucker cows there for production, but some sucker cows there for environmental purposes, Alex. And I think it's been a great thing. I've been at some estates and farms lately and just seen the effect of these cattle grazing these areas and grazing them down well. And quite often, when you go and look at Spain and Italy and France and all these countries that complain about all the burning and all these rapid fires going on, that's because they've not been vegetated down and eaten down. And so I think that's a big positive for us to be looking at.
Do you know, we have clients of ours here in Ayrshire that I work with who have just gotten themselves 15 virtual fencing collars, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out. So these are native breeding sucker cows that have never seen a hill before,
Yeah,
and we're going to get them out, and we are going to. You know, it'll be a bit of give and take. There'll be a learning curve there, but it'll be really nice to see, you know, how much of a go can we make of it with this hill that they've never been on before. It'll be
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Do you know, Alec, when you go over to places like in Northern Ireland and that, you do come across individual farmers who have cows, and they maybe have 100 and 200 cows. And actually, what they do with these cows is these cows are created for grazing purposes, and they actually move them about who requires them
Mhm,
onto
mhm.
their land and that. So there is that environmental situation coming into it. But I think what you might find is in a number of cows for environmental purposes.
That's interesting because so Scotland has like the Scottish Land Matching Service. You're almost talking about a cattle matching service there or a land matching service for cattle. No, I mean I think there's definitely a place for something like that.
Yeah, well, because I actually came across an individual last week, and he was talking about doing that. Mhm.
And Gavin, where we are seeing increases in herd numbers, are they native breeds doing a job on a hill, or are they your kind of lowland continental breeds?
And that's a really good question. I would have said what we're probably seeing is an increase that when they increase their numbers of cows, they want to make sure that they're easy calving, they're easy looked after, and they're more suited. The cows more suited for the environment, and that's when you're starting to see now. I've got some figures there since 2015 to 2024. Just giving you an example, it's like the Solaire crosses have increased 58%, Shorthorn crosses 47%, Ling crosses 21%, Blue Greys 21%. Cows that really suit the environment, numbers can be quite high with them because some might be in, but a lot of them are outside in these areas of deferred grazing and up onto the hill and that. They're fertile. They have good fat on them. They're good foragers on them as well, and maternal aspects on them. But a lot of farmers have got it clued up that they're still able to put continental stroke terminal bulls to them. And I always summarise it as saying a cow for the environment, but still a calf for the marketplace.
Yeah.
And that's coming through very much so of how we're looking at things. So I see a variety of things. I see people that maximise and optimising their hill and upland ground and looking at all the options. But as you well know, Alec, there's areas you just can't do that. And I often quite go into these areas now when you see big numbers and things like that, and you realise at the end of the day, well, it's probably other areas of income, alternative income that they've got that are able to fund some of the big sheds and buildings that are going up there as well. Renewables is very much dominant there.
And the other thing that stands out to me, just when you're talking about the ease of calving or the kind of traits that you want in your sucker cow, I mean, labour's a huge driver in the industry. It doesn't matter which sector you're talking about, and if you've got a difficult herd, that's the last thing you want.
Well, absolutely, and you want to make sure you keep your staff as well, and make sure that it's an enjoyable time, that they're not being challenged all the time. So it's got to make it easier for them. Actually, it's a slightly separate subject, but labour is a huge worry to me at the moment. I think you come across it every day, and so do I. They're just getting good labour out there, people who want to come and be doing the calvings and lambings, and that's something we want to do. But you still also come across some good young people that just want an opportunity to get into the industry.
Hmm. Hmm. And how do you facilitate that? Really difficult.
It's difficult because you go and say, well, everybody can. Gone are the days where you could probably leave school and live in the middle of the city. You could go to agriculture college and all these opportunities. There's a number of people, if you go and look at the older generation from me and upwards, who actually would started off as young people and got the opportunity of tenancies. Then from tenancies, they're able to buy out and things like that now. But they don't, and you go and say new, and you talk about new entrants, and you think, wow, that's really hard for a new entrant unless they've got quite a bit of money behind them as it well. And I know it's something we've talked about before, but I really feel, Alex, the same as you. I come across farmers and large farms, medium farms, it doesn't matter what size the farms, who actually say, I like the farm here, I want to stay in the farm, but I'm maybe getting to the age where I can't farm it. And I'm saying, well, give, like the land matching services and that, to be able to provide younger people to come in and say, well, we'll farm it for you on a contract basis. We need to be looking at that because that can work with so many that if they're an older generation or just family issues, or not family issues, sorry, a family are away elsewhere, but they want to keep the farm. Well, why can't they still own that land and allow younger people to come on a contract basis? Uh, and not want to sell their land because any land's just getting snapped up. Some boys are just getting bigger and bigger all the time for that land. But allow the younger people to come on board with a contract and don't make the contract difficult. There's many people I come across, the contract is no more than a handshake at times or a simple bit of paper. That's what we want to do. There is so many good young people out there. Well, let's give them opportunity. And let's talk to those that say, well, I want to stay in the farmhouse. Absolutely. I want to keep the farm. Absolutely. Because I don't know where the future generation might be coming. But here's young people that really want to take this opportunity. You must give them that.
There's a huge trust element in there as well. Like I can understand why people want a belt and braces agreement when it comes to something like that, but you just have to find the right person. It's so crucial.
Well, I think trust goes a lot more than a bit of paper at times. If you trust each other, you respect each other, and that's where it works. Mhm.
And Gavin, is there any trends happening out there across the sector right now that concern you? Is there something on the horizon that you think, oh, I don't know about this?
I think one of the things we always talk about, you just don't know. You just don't know what's round the corner, and we're seeing all that. And I think we've got to remember the world situation can change all the time. There's always this thing going to look at called imports, and you've got these countries. Doesn't matter where you are, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Brazil, and that. When folks say, "Oh, the big risk of them," there's a lot of these countries who really have been putting imports into us lately. New Zealand have certainly put a lot into us, but really, where their real concern, where their real target is the Asian market. If you look at the Chinese market, they're getting more and more affluent all the time, and that's where they want all their meat to go. And it suits them far better to do that. But because of the world changing, and certain countries fall out with Donald and Mr. Trump now and again. He puts tariffs on, he takes tariffs off. And I'm sure some of these ships are going round in circles sometimes, wondering where they're going to go because who's falling out with who, and that's why sometimes they might be coming into us. But I think if we can get back to stability there, then we'll probably not see the level of imports probably coming into what we've done. And I think that's something that I see as a bit of a trend that we've got to keep our eyes out for. And the other thing we've got to make sure we're doing, we have to make sure that we we have a huge asset here. Like you're in Ayrshire and I'm in Lanarkshire, and we have this thing called water. And the rain comes down, and we're able to grow the grass, which many countries are jealous of what we're able to do. Well, if we're able to do a job and grow cattle and sheep, let us keep doing that because that's where we are. Most of our ground's less favoured. We're not going to be putting vegetables or arable onto it. Let's maximise what we can do, and we can do it well. To rely on imports is a huge, huge risk.
And in terms of the Scottish beef product internationally, I mean, is it fair to say that we're still punching above our weight? People still want the Scottish product?
Yes, I think the Scottish product is very much in demand. You've just got to make sure you have enough of it and it's at the right price you want to do. Scottish beef has got a good name for itself. It's just like Angus has got a good name for itself. And I've always been, and this is where it's always a bit more controversial, I've always kind of written down, as you well know, and pressed in that, and I've sort of said that I feel that Scotch beef can be very much like a bottle of whiskey. The further you go away from home, the more it's worth. And you think, but well, what about the home market? Well, the home market, the issue is you could probably have Scotch beef still, Alec, in your local butchers, specialist outlets, certain catering. But we've got to remember these supermarkets need to fill their shelves 52 weeks of the year. And that's where you're going to see Irish beef, other imports, and beef from the dairy. Beef from the dairy is a very much in demand product amongst the retailers because they're getting them, well, you know, we experienced 330, 340 kilos dead weight, 18, 19 months. But that 330, 340 kilos dead weight actually puts them into the pack sizes perfectly. They don't want to increase the pack size because they need to increase the price. And that's what we've got to remember. Scotch beef is a unique product. It's a great product in that. But I really sometimes wonder if we'd be better looking more and more. And that's why I think QMS and that do a very good job in some of the exports and the trade conventions and that, because that's what we need to look at and keep doing that where we can maybe get a higher value for it. It'd be hard to get a higher value for it at the moment when there's so many other products going to come in this and the consumer has a price squeeze on them in the home market.
Yeah, yeah. And Gavin, we talked a little bit about environmental policy and the no fence virtual fencing technology. Obviously, there's the 410-day calving interval. How are farmers responding to environmental policy out there? How are beef producers responding?
Well, the first thing was you went back to 410-day. The first thing about the 410-day conditionality was that there was a number within the industry that said, "Oh, this will decimate the suckling industry." It had no little of any effect in the suckling industry. I think most folk actually did well of it. I think about 13% of the cows didn't qualify, but the increase that they did get more or less made folk get more money out of it, and so they were quite happy to do that.
The whole farm plan is ramping up now. Farmers are being asked to carbon audit, to biodiversity map their farms, to have their animal health plans in place, to do soil sampling or integrated pest management plans. I mean, from what you're hearing from farmers on the ground every day, people are kind of rising to that challenge.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the real big increases has been seen is our grassland management. And it all starts below, all starts from the soil. The work you've been doing and many others are doing, and from looking at the pH. I always feel I wish we had a scheme for lime. Because everybody would actually get the lime to the right pH, and then where the pH was right, we put the fertilizers. I still come across odd farmers where they put pH, where they put plenty of fertilizer on, but if the pH isn't right, we're not maxing what we're doing. But the real uptake amongst farmers and looking at the grass, maximising the grass has been phenomenal and things. And I think that was actually a good time for us when the fertiliser price went, synthetic fertiliser price went up. Folk concentrated more and looking at their clovers and that. So that's what we're seeing is far better concentrating on the grass, making better silage, whatever it is, and making sure that can be maximised. So that's one area I am seeing folk work on, Alex.
I always smile when I hear people talk about lime, and I don't know if she's still in the building, but Lorna Galloway is here today. Huge proponent for getting your pH right as a kind of foundational measure. I'm sure if she's listening to this podcast, she would firmly agree.
I think one of the things I'll just add on to that, I sometimes think that we can put things down in documents and articles, and farmers will say, "Oh, that's quite interesting." But where you really get knowledge transfer and really working is when you show them. And when Lorna shows it, Lorna Galloway and has her open days or her days for farmers and all that, that's where it hits home. She puts it over so well. People like that put it over so well. That makes a big impact. Folk can see the difference.
And Gavin, looking ahead for the next 12 months, I mean, what's the outlook like for the beef sector in Scotland? What are you seeing coming down the track?
Well, Alec, if I knew that, I wouldn't be doing this job. Put it that way. I think everybody's in this situation at the moment. Where are we going to get to in terms? We've seen prices now down about 580 pence a kilo dead weight. I think anybody, if they were going to have a crystal ball or go into local bookies, are thinking that price will maybe get to 600, 620, and it maybe stabilise at that. So I think everybody's. I think actually what we want is more confidence and security in it. And I think I've always harped on about nobody's looking for the top prices back to 720 pence, but what they are looking for is, well, this might be your maximum figure, but this might be a minimum figure. And all of a sudden, Alec, we can do our benchmarking, we do our budgets, our forward plans, anything we need to do for the banks, and that we can stabilise this far better. How can we carry out as businessmen what we're asked to do when there's this uncertainty? So we hope that it's going to stabilise and things. I think the world situation needs to get better as well. I think we still need. I think we still will fight to make sure that the retailers have the confidence in us to take it. And I think they have. I think Tesco said next year they'll be sourcing Scotch beef, and that's really good if they stick to that as well. You're seeing today all day with pork, very much for Brown Brothers as well. That's great to have that. We need confidence to come into them that they are with us on that. On doing it, and they stick with us and what we're doing. So that's another thing for the short and longer term. But I think we need to, I think what we do, we have livestock farms do well, and beef and sheep work well together. There's no doubt since Brexit. The sheep industry has gone a different course than what the economists thought. The economists thought your ewes would be worth £1 and your lambs would be worth £5 or anything. But the sheep industry is thriving, but often very much the cattle to work together on doing that. But the cattle offer so much to feed our nation on land that can't be doing anything else, and we have water. Water. If you actually go down south into England, England have over 10,000 acres of vineyards now. Why? Because our climate is now encouraged to take them on because France are struggling. And we're seeing that climate. And England, certain areas of England, you don't see many cattle and sheep now because we're drying up.
Mm-hmm.
We need to maximise and realise what this country can do and do it well and be rewarded for doing it well.
And Gavin, so we'll not hold you to any of this. It has been recorded, but don't worry, we're not. Nobody will be back at you in a 12 months' time. Thinking about where the sector's going over the next 12 months, what are some of the biggest risks that you think that we as a sector should be preparing for?
The biggest risks, uh, I think one of the big we cannot prepare for it. You never know what's around the corner, and I think everybody always wonders where our health or disease something might pick up somewhere. You're always getting this scaremongering. That's where it is. But any other country could be there. There's going forward. I think the risk going forward as well is we've got to look at our costs and really got to say it. I mean, this price that we're not taking control of is how do we take more control of our costs? And as you talked about with Lorna's work as well in grass, maximising that grass because it's the cheapest form that we can get there. But with unpredictability of cost, look at our fuel. So it's how do we get more of not more, more solid with it in the way that this unpredictability of where we are. We don't know where we are, and that's fuel, fertilizer, machinery. And look at even your local farmers will talk about the price of silage wrap now. It just keeps going up. All our costs keep coming up, and I think we've got to say to ourselves, and I think everybody's got that business brain about them to say, where can we change our cost structure as well? And I think that's what we've got to be looking at and continue looking at and getting reviewed on doing it because the market forces might be showing price volatility. And that's why we need to be looking at costs. I think it's so important that we do look at that, and that's what's coming round the corner. The other thing would be is you just don't know what legislation might be put in front. Alec, I think I could go back to you. You'll be able to tell us that it's quite not alarming. A lot of farmers have had to stand their heads up and really look at where they are with slurry regulations and things like that. And that can become another cost that's put onto shoe regulation. What you're talking about in the next 6 months, a year, and things like that will be this continuation of people being able to say to themselves, are they getting imposed to make changes and what cost is it going to be, Alec? And I think you could probably help me here is that could become quite costly on herds that are maybe questioning their profitability and margin at the moment.
Well, the derogation on precision application of slurry coming in 2027 is probably the next big thing that a lot of farmers who previously, like I say, got the derogation will have to deal with. So there could potentially be a lot of dribble bars and a lot of trailing shoes purchased in the next wee while.
There you go. Well, yeah, but it's all costs, isn't it?
And Gavin, I want to bring the podcast to a bit of a close now, but let's end on a positive note. I mean, what are some of the opportunities out there for the sector?
Well, I think we go back to the first thing is I want younger people to come into the business and be given the opportunity to do it. We must find ways to do it. Land matching service is an excellent opportunity, an excellent way to do it. I think what we've actually got to make farmers and more aware of what they could do with their business, because I think there's a number of folk out there and you just meet them and they say we weren't aware of maybe looking at getting advice from Alec on how they can continue to be seen to be owning the ground and owning the farm, but actually letting other folk to come in and do it. I think that's the positive. The other thing is we are producing a product that's wanted in the marketplace, but we need to have all the signs to encourage us to keep doing it. And we do it and we do it well, and we have the land and we have the people to do it right. I think but we also got to make sure that we balance our production and keep our numbers right, because there's always a drive, Alec, on the other side to make sure that we're hitting our net zeros, our climate. And the cattle are not the reason for the issue. They're part of the solution to help everybody maintain what they want to do. But we must keep looking at opportunities and do that as well and adjust to what people are wanting. I always get hit pretty hard in the last few weeks when they tell me that over 1.6 million people are now on weight loss jabs in the UK. And when they're on that, the demand for protein, dense food is going up for meat and fish, and they're buying smaller quantities but spending more on the higher quality lean cuts. That's your Scotch beef. So if there's a demand there, make sure Scotch beef is a product for them.
Fantastic. And Gavin, one final question. You're going to go to the Highland Show, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, over this week and weekend. What is your one take-home message to a beef farmer that you meet in the cattle lines? What's the one thing that they should be doing for the next year ahead?
We've come out with a most difficult question at the end, Alec, and what they're doing. I think, as I said to you before, Alec, everybody's doing a different job. There's those that are doing from birth to finishing. There's those the sucklers and things like that. To actually say to themselves that really, when you look at it, that blip that came up was a false economy. That actually we come back down and realize that the profits we gained from last year are equaled out. So we're not well behind. I think it'll be equaling out quite a bit. The suckler producers have got to have confidence there because they've had 2 good years. It's the finishers. We need to make sure that these finishers are actually rewarded in the marketplace, because it is no use for us to turn round and say they need to pay less, because that has a knock-on effect of our producers. So I don't think I'll have too many issues with what we call our suckle calf producers, Alec. There's wean calves in stores. It's the finishers, and making sure that they can see a life in front of them at the moment. And that's why I think in the future, Alec, with the finishers, we'll see fewer finishers but bigger finishers, because they have a scale of economies of scale will help them very much.
Perfect. Well, finishers to finish the podcast. On behalf of the Farm Advisory Service, Gavin, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you at the Highland Show.
Yeah, Ali, nice to see you.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Thrill the Hill. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can try one of our other FAS podcasts, like Stock Talk, our livestock-focused podcast with senior consultant James Orr, or join ecologist Harry Fisher over on the Natural Capital podcast to hear all things biodiversity. Thrill the Hill is brought to you in association with the Scottish Government. Executive producers Kirstyn Blackwood and Kerry Hammond, producer Heather Stuart, editor Kieron Sim, and presented by me, Alex Pirie.
The Farm Advisory Service podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business, and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.